Last night I was on the game with a couple of the homies, and one of them, who happens to be a Georgia fan, asked me the question, JT, do you think that the Georgia Bulldogs will repeat as national champions this season? Now, that is a very good question. And to be honest with you, I didn't even think about it until he brought it up, because Georgia lost a lot of talent from last year's championship team. But even though they did lose a lot of talent, Georgia happens to be a football factory. They lose great players and they replace them with more great players. It's kind of like they have a conveyor belt. They bring in these highly touted high school recruits. They put them on a little conveyor belt. They build them. They mold them into elite level players. And then they ship them off to the NFL. So for Georgia, I think they are still one of the most talented teams in college football. If you were to ask me to give you my top 3, top 4 most talented teams heading into this season, Georgia probably would be third behind Alabama and Ohio State. And honestly, you kind of have to reword this question, because the question pretty much isn't, will Georgia be able to repeat as national champions? It probably should be worded, will Georgia be able to defeat Alabama this season? Because we already know that Georgia most likely is going to run through the SEC East competition. Now, we're hoping that maybe either Kentucky or Tennessee can push Georgia this year, maybe pull off the upset. But by judging the talent gap between Georgia and the rest of the SEC East division, it's still a very large gap. And even judging Georgia and Alabama compared to the rest of the SEC, it's not even a close race. So for Georgia, I think that this team offensively could be better than what they were last season. And the reason why I say that is because I really like their wide receiver room. You got A.D. Mitchell, who I think is their most talented wide receiver. You got Ladd McConkey. You also have Kearis Jackson. So you also have a lot of good depth behind those guys as well. But what really has me excited about this offense is this tight end room. This is the best tight end room in college football. And this may be one of the best tight end rooms that we have seen in the history of college football. I mean, you have Brock Bowers, who was a freshman phenom last year. You got a Reid Gilbert, who's like a hybrid tight end wide receiver, similar to Kyle Pitts. He's going to be a demon this year. If you don't really know who a Reid Gilbert is, if you're a non-Georgia fan, I promise you're going to find out about him really quickly. So he transferred from LSU last offseason, and then he went to Florida, but then something ended up happening, and then he ended up transferring to Georgia, and then he didn't play last year due to off-the-field issues. Well, he's back, and looks like he's going to be fully ready to go this year. He was really good during spring. He caught a touchdown in the spring game as well. So I'm so hyped about a Reid Gilbert. I think that he is the new breed of the new kind of tight ends that are now starting to enter the game of football. Now, when you're judging the tight end position, you're looking for a tight end who not only is a good blocker, who not only is good as a tight end, but is also good as a wide receiver. So I love a Reid Gilbert. I love his game. I think he's going to be a major part of Georgia's offense. You also have Darnell Washington. There aren't too many teams that still utilize tight ends. And there aren't too many teams in college football that have 2 or 3 very good ones. Outside of Georgia, probably Utah, but that's about it. So I think that the tight end group really is what has me so excited about this offense. And of course, Georgia has the best offensive line in college football this year. I mean, they're absolutely loaded on the offensive line. Now, at running back, you did lose James Cook and Zamir White, but Kenny McIntosh is going to end up filling in. I think that he's a pretty good all-around back. You also have Kendall Milton, who probably will be right behind him. So for Georgia, when it comes to the offensive line and the skill position group, I think you potentially could be better in that department this season compared to last year. Now, of course, the biggest question is going to be Sir Stetson. And for those of you guys who are new to the podcast, who don't know who Sir Stetson is, it's Stetson Bennett. And a couple of months ago, I said that if Stetson Bennett leads Georgia to a national championship win over Alabama, I'm going to put respect on his name, and he is no longer going to be called Stetson Bennett on the channel. His new name is Sir Stetson. They're going to make a movie about Stetson Bennett, Disney is, in the next couple of decades, and the title is going to be called Sir Stetson. And I kind of feel like not enough people are still putting respect on Stetson Bennett's name. And even Kirby Smart feels this way. Anytime somebody asks Kirby Smart a question about Sir Stetson, he gets really fired up and he gets really passionate because Kirby Smart loves Sir Stetson. He believes in Sir Stetson. And why wouldn't you believe in Sir Stetson? He led you to a national championship. Now, the narrative that, he got carried by the team around him, I can understand that. But at the same time, let's not act as if Sir Stetson didn't do anything at all. It's not like the guy threw 0 touchdowns and 0 passing yards. You feel me? He had a factor. He played a large part of that. He has pretty good accuracy. He may not have a strong arm, but he's a pretty good athlete, a way better athlete than what a lot of people give him credit for. Like, there are some really good traits in Stetson Bennett's game. Now, is he going to end up being a first-round pick in the NFL? Most likely not, but Stetson Bennett is a really good college quarterback. He may not be a superstar like a Bryce Young or a C.J. Stroud, and he may not be the most flashiest like a Hendon Hooker or Will Levis, but he gets the job done. He reminds me a lot of A.J. McCarron in a sense. You remember A.J. McCarron back in the early 2010s? He wasn't flashy. He didn't have the greatest arm. He wasn't even as good as an athlete as Stetson Bennett was. But since Alabama has such a good team around them, all they really needed A.J. McCarron to do was to, take care of the football and make big throws when needed. And that's what Sir Stetson did it last season. In the national championship game, he made a couple of big throws that kept Georgia alive in the game and eventually led them to winning the national title. So I think that Sir Stetson deserves a little bit more respect. And I consider him to be a top 25 quarterback in college football. So on defense, this defense got absolutely rated by the NFL, but you still do have a couple of great players on this defense who are potentially going to be first round picks. Jalen Carter could be better than Wyatt and Jordan Davis. Jalen Carter is an absolute monster. We were freaking out when we saw Jordan Davis combined performance, but Jalen Carter is more freakier of an athlete than both of those guys combined. This is somebody that you kind of gave the super soldier serum to, and you came out with the real life version of Captain America pretty much. And that's Jalen Carter. This dude is an absolute monster. And I don't know where Georgia finds these freakish defensive linemen, but Jalen Carter, mark my words, do not be surprised if he ends up being a top 10 pick next season. You also have Nolan Smith, Robert Bill, Keely Ringo also is one of the best cornerbacks in college football. He's also potentially going to be a first round pick in next year's draft as well. As safety, Christopher Smith, Tyke Smith as well, who was a transfer from West Virginia last year, but he kind of had some injuries that he dealt with earlier on, and it kind of is what held him back a little bit. But overall, you look at Georgia's team, this is still one of the most talented teams in college football. And their schedule isn't really all that tough. They're out of conference. They start week 1 against Oregon, which we're going to talk about on the next episode of the podcast, previewing that game. But they should be able to handle business against Oregon, even though they are going against Dan Lanning, their former defensive coordinator. But outside of that, you play Stanford on the road against South Carolina. Always interesting to see Georgia match up against South Carolina. South Carolina is a sneaky good team, but I don't think they're going to be able to pull off the upset this year. You got Kent State, Missouri, Auburn, Vanderbilt. Then you have the Florida-Georgia game, the world's largest cocktail party. Then you play Tennessee, Mississippi State, Kentucky, and then Georgia Tech to close off the season. So I don't really think that Georgia is going to lose any of those games. I do think that they could potentially be challenged by Tennessee. I don't really think Kentucky is going to be able to challenge Georgia the way I think Tennessee will, simply for the fact that I think Tennessee's offense is really unique. And I think that it's really difficult to game plan for, simply for the fact that they tire you out so quickly and so fast. And I think with the fact that Hendon Hooker is just so good at taking care of the football, I think that Tennessee could be the only team I really see during this schedule for Georgia that could potentially pull off the upset. And maybe Oregon, because it is week 1. That's the best opportunity for upsets to happen. But in terms of if they can get past Alabama this year, I'm not going to say no. You feel me? I'm going to rate it on a scale of 1 through 10. My confidence in Georgia's ability to get past Alabama this year. Because if they can get past Alabama, without any doubt in my mind, I think they're going to win a national championship. But I probably would rate it a 6 out of 10. Because it's funny how Georgia had a historically good defense last season. And now it seems as if the roles are reversed, because everybody expects Alabama's defense to be historically good this year with how stacked they are on the front 7 and then the secondary. And also their offense got better as well. And remind you that Alabama wasn't that great. As a matter of fact, many people probably would tell you that that was one of the least talented teams that Nick Saban has had during his time at Alabama over the last decade, and yet they still were able to get to the national championship game. So for Georgia now, you're facing an absolute juggernaut, and you're facing a team that not only is stacked on defense, but they're also stacked on offense. So for me, I got to give them a 6 out of 10. And the reason why I'm not going to say no, and the reason why I can't really say yes, is because I'm not going to count out a team that still is top 4, top 5 in the country when it comes to the talent standpoint. I don't think that Alabama is going to blow Georgia out of the water this year, simply for the fact that Georgia is really good up front. And their offensive line is going to be super consistent. And they're also going to be really good in the trenches. And as long as you're really good up front, you should be able to compete with pretty much any team in college football. And I think that their offense has improved compared to where they were last year. And their offense wasn't bad last year. If you are thinking that I'm trying to say that Georgia's offense was bad, that's not my point. My point is that I think that this offense is more talented this season compared to what it was last year, because I just think that with the addition of a Reid Gilbert and the fact that you have so much depth and talent at wide receiver, I think this offense is going to be even better. And Stetson Bennett, a.k.a. Sir Stetson, should improve. And Stetson Bennett is a hard worker. So I think that for Georgia, I think they have a chance this year. If they can beat Alabama, I think that they should be able to win a national championship game. Now, Ohio State is also pretty good as well, but I don't think that Ohio State and Georgia are all that far apart. As a matter of fact, I think that both of those two teams are just as talented, or pretty much equals. If they were to play today, I think that Georgia probably would be the slight favorite over Ohio State by probably, 1, maybe 2 points? If they were to do like the odds or point spread of that game on a neutral site field, Georgia most likely probably would be the favorite. But I like Georgia this year. I'm really big on Georgia. I think that Georgia, without a doubt, is going to win the East. And I think that they definitely should be in the running for competing in a spot in the college football playoffs this year. But of course, we judge Georgia based on where they stack up against Alabama, because they're the 2 top dogs. So for Alabama, I already said it earlier, they're on a revenge tour this year. They're looking for revenge. And I think they're going to blow out every single body they play by at least 2 touchdowns or more. However, I think when they play Georgia, it's kind of going to be the unstoppable object versus the immovable force, because Georgia has a lot of freaks. And Alabama's offensive line, yes, it is going to be improved. However, it's still not set in stone who everybody is who's going to be starting on the offensive line. It's still a work in progress. So I think that Alabama definitely does have, a little bit of weaknesses that Georgia could exploit this season. But when it comes to Georgia being able to repeat as national champions, I rate it on a scale of 1 through 10, a 6 out of 10. I think that they have a very good shot. It just, can you get through Alabama? You feel me? And what if they don't have to play Alabama? That makes their chances even better. But let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think that Georgia will be able to repeat as national champions this upcoming college football season?